So The Last of Us Part 2 has been out for a little while now, but before that, another zombie game was released which bears a significant number of similarities. That game is Days Gone. It seems pretty clear, or likely, that Days Gone was heavily influenced by the first Last of Us game. In fact, the gameplay mechanics, and much of the aesthetic, are so similar to this game that it seems as though without The Last of Us, Days Gone would not even exist. I'm not aware of any discussion or mention of these influences by any of the development team for Days Gone, but the two games are too similar not to be linked in this way. In terms of the gameplay and the post-apocalyptic zombie-filled environmental setting, Days Gone is just like an open-world Last of Us. So Days Gone mimics or emulates the Last of Us gameplay, but Days Gone also pushes forward these shared gameplay mechanics with its own new features. And it's quite interesting, or amusing really, because The Last of Us Part 2, now released, has incorporated some approximations of the features Days Gone included to advance forward from the previous Last of Us game. Most likely simply out of coincidence too, based on the development timeline for both games. I mentioned this briefly in my video detailing my experience with The Last of Us Part 2, which was essentially a review of the game. Feel free to check that out if you're interested. But yes, one game reflects the other, and then that reflection is reflected back again for the next instalment of the original franchise which started it all. Anyway, it seemed like it might be fun to compare Days Gone and The Last of Us Part 2. Go through some of the similarities and differences, and contrast how each game may handle the same specific features in different ways. So let's get into it, shall we? Alright, so first up let's start with the combat. It's similar in each game. Obviously, there are a wide variety of enemies to fight in both, although a wider range of them in Days Gone. Because of this, there are different combat approaches which are appropriate for specific types of enemies. Although in Days Gone there is more flexibility to use one type of approach for all hostiles, this being an all guns blazing approach. The reason for this is that ammunition and weapons are more plentiful in Days Gone, and there is a broader range of more powerful firearms which can take down large groups of enemies or individual strong enemies. There is an emphasis on and encouragement towards stealth in both games, but partly due to the reasons mentioned, and others too, stealth is often more necessary in The Last of Us Part 2. This leads us on to talking about the enemy AI. We'll start with the human enemies. In both games, human enemies occupy an area dotted around the place following a walk route. You can sneak past them, take them out by stealth, or just attack head-on, resulting in a gunfight. If the enemies hear you, they'll search for you, and sometimes call for help from other members of their group. If they spot you, they'll attack. So this concept is the same in both games. However, there are slight differences in the programming for each. The human enemies are more sensitive to your presence in Days Gone, noticing you far more easily. You cannot hide behind things and achieve the same level of invisibility as you can in The Last of Us Part 2. In Days Gone, hiding behind things works more like it does in reality. It doesn't guarantee invisibility. Enemies seem to notice you behind cover quite often. They also seem to keep track of you better, hear you more easily, and are able to find you more quickly when searching than enemies in The Last of Us Part 2. In The Last of Us Part 2, it seems slightly easier to throw hostiles off your trail by running away and hiding behind new cover. As for the zombie enemies, the AI sensitivity seems relatively similar in both games. Now on to the varying types of enemies. Both games have different factions of human foes. There is a deranged cult in each. Days Gone has the Rippers, and The Last of Us Part 2 the Seraphites. They're very similar in concept, even engaging in many of the same practices, such as hunting outsiders, deliberately scarring their skin for symbolic reasons, and adhering to other strange cult practices. Other than this group, the Marauders occupy the Days Gone digital territory, and in The Last of Us Part 2, it's the WLF. Since Days Gone is an open-world game, it is also common to encounter other small groups of human hostiles not affiliated with any of the prominent large groups. These small gangs ambush you when you're travelling and hold people hostage who you can choose to rescue for a reward. You can sometimes also find them occupying small camps. The Last of Us Part 2 does not have anything comparable to this. There are more animal enemies in Days Gone than The Last of Us Part 2. Days Gone features bears, mountain lions, wolves, coyotes, infected variations on some of these, and infected ravens which attack from the air. The Last of Us Part 2 doesn't have these. The level of interactivity with the environment is fairly similar in both games, for the most part, although The Last of Us Part 2 provides a bit more in this domain. You can climb over roughly the same amount of surfaces and squeeze through gaps when running in each game. But The Last of Us Part 2 allows you to crawl underneath things to hide from enemies, go prone and swim in bodies of water. The gameplay is more fluid and smooth overall, and your avatar is more nimble. There is more encouragement for you to throw enemies off your trail by running from them, climbing over things, and squeezing through narrow gaps until finding somewhere to hide. The crafting systems for inventory items are pretty much the same in both games. You can craft many of the same things too, such as health packs, stamina cocktails, molotovs, and other bombs and projectiles. You can craft suppressors in both games to quieten your gunfire for stealth purposes. This was a good feature which was included in Days Gone, and since the first Last of Us game didn't have the option, it's cool that they've incorporated it now for this new game. However, while The Last of Us Part 2 only allows you to craft a suppressor for one weapon, this being a pistol, Days Gone lets you craft them for 3 weapons, a pistol, machine gun, and sniper rifle. In The Last of Us Part 2 you find letters and documents, while in Days Gone you find voice recordings which document other people's experiences in the zombie world. In Days Gone, enemy camps utilise bear traps and tripwires which spring sound alarms. The traps need to be watched out for and navigated around. You can cut the tripwires, and while the bear traps can be a problem for you, they can also be useful, because you can pick them up and reset them so you can no longer spring them but your enemies can. The Last of Us Part 2 doesn't have any traps like this, although there are areas with explosive tripwires to navigate. However, these are far less common than any of the traps in Days Gone. In The Last of Us Part 2 you can throw bottles and bricks to distract enemies, and you have to find and acquire these objects before use. In Days Gone you can throw stones for the same purpose, but they're already equipped in your inventory, and they're infinite. Although both titles are meant to be survival games, The Last of Us Part 2 is more realistic and challenging in this regard, as resources are sparser, and there are no merchants you can purchase supplies from. Once you've got to a certain point in Days Gone, supplies are abundant, as you can purchase them from any camp. In Days Gone you can collect scrap to use to repair your bike and melee weapon. In The Last of Us Part 2 you can collect parts to upgrade your guns and melee weapons, and repair melee weapons. It's basically the same feature. In Days Gone, before you acquire a stronger melee, you start off using a knife. You can switch between this knife and any new melee weapon you acquire. If your stronger melee breaks, you will revert back to using the knife. The knife cannot be broken, so can be used as many times as you like. It's good for stealth, however in combat it takes a long time to bring down an enemy with it. This is the same in The Last of Us Part 2 when playing as Ellie. Both games have the same torch mechanic. Nothing more to say about that really. Activating generators to restore power to places is very common in Days Gone, and you usually need to find petrol to fill a generator before it can be used. There are instances where you have to turn power on in similar ways in The Last of Us Part 2, and sometimes have to find petrol to do so as well, although not as often. Perhaps the most significant asset Days Gone affords you, which The Last of Us Part 2 does not, is a motorbike. This goes hand in hand with the vast open world setting of this game, allowing you to travel at speed around the place. There is also fast travel from point to point, but the bike allows you to go anywhere, including places that can't be reached by fast travel, which is really anywhere other than camps and Nero checkpoints. While The Last of Us Part 2 does not have this feature, it does allow you to use a boat to travel through the flooded city streets. Using mechanical modes of transportation like this is a big change from the first Last of Us game, which didn't grant anything of the sort. Another difference between the two games, as briefly mentioned earlier, is the ability to swim. The Last of Us Part 2 has a good swimming feature, which is easy, fairly speedy, and has smooth fluid motions as your avatar goes through the water. It also allows you to dive so you can pick up items underwater, swim under things, and through gaps to reach new places. The water can also be used as an aid to stealth attacks, as you can hide in it and swim underneath certain areas of land or floor, popping up in an open pool in a different place to take an enemy out. In contrast, Days Gone does not let you swim, and interactions with water in general are very clumsy and unintuitive, not fluid or smooth at all. You can walk through shallow bodies of water, but only very slowly, which is a great impediment when trying to escape enemies. If you stray into water which is even slightly too deep, you drown. And by too deep, I mean past waist height. It's really annoying while playing actually, because there are many large bodies of water in the game, and you can't swim in any of them, and drown so easily in such shallow water. It's a rather immersion-breaking flaw in an otherwise very immersive and fun game. Something else briefly mentioned earlier, Days Gone has a wider range of weaponry, and some guns which are far more powerful than anything The Last of Us Part 2 has to offer. They also pack far more ammo, and can be resupplied whenever you want by going to the right merchant in any of the camps, providing you've accrued enough camp credits for the purchase. This kind of increased firepower is appropriate, as the enemies you face in Days Gone can be far greater in number. You can be faced with individual enemies who are very strong and take a lot of ammo to bring down, like Reachers, Breakers and Bears. But you also face hordes of dozens, sometimes hundreds of zombie-like enemies known as Freakers all at once. So to take them down you need a huge amount of ammo. You get to use a crossbow in both games, but the crossbow in Days Gone is far more dynamic. A more powerful version of it can be unlocked, and there are also far more variations of bolt types which can be fired. In The Last of Us Part 2 there are normal bolts and explosive bolts. That's it, I think. In Days Gone there are normal bolts, explosive bolts, poisonous bolts, freaker nest resin dipped bolts which turn human enemies against their own group members, and there are flaming bolts too. Are there more? I can't remember, and I'm not going to research it. So there we are. That's a fairly large number of comparisons, but there are probably more. If you know of any that I haven't included, feel free to let me know in the comments. What do you think of both these games? Do you like them? Do you like one more than the other? Which of them do you prefer? Let me know about that in the comments as well. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed. Leave a like if you did, subscribe for more videos like this and other gaming videos as well, and click the bell end to receive alerts when the next video is posted. See you next time.